So our today's topic of the discussion is visual elements and graphics, and this will cover chapter 4 of our book. So as you all know, the key component of a compelling website is the use of interesting and appropriate graphics. Today, we are going to introduce you to work with visual elements on web pages. As you know, when you include images on your website, it is always important to remember that not all users are able to view them. Some users may have vision problems and need assistive technology such as a screen reader application that reads the web page to them. In addition, some search engines send out spiders and robots to walk, which is we know as a web crawling, to walk the web and catalog pages for their indexes and databases, such as programs. Such programs do not access your image. So web crawlers are always running, and they do collect information about different pages, which help them in different cases. Suppose, remember about the search engines, right? They get help from there. So the key point is those web crawlers cannot actually access the image. They just can access the text. Also, there might be visitors using mobile devices with images disabled, which is very true in major part of the world still, because internet speed is not that good in many places. So people use or browse the web without enabling the images. So when we are actually talking about visual element and graphics, we also have to keep in mind that what if I add images to my page, but that image is not being displayed. So in that case, I have to make the page in such a way so that it's accessible to everyone. So as a web developer, you have to strive to create pages that are enhanced by graphical elements. Not only that, but also so that the pages are usable without them. Okay. So in short, today's discussion is we are going to learn how to apply image elements and graphics to the pages. And then we'll talk about optimizing the image, configuring the image in different ways, configuring the visual effects using CSS, etc. And finally, following recommended web design guidelines for the graphics on web pages. Okay. So let's start with configuring lines and borders on the page. So lines and borders can be configured in two ways. One is using the HTML capability, and the second is using CSS. So first, how using the HTML capability. Well, HTML itself has an element, the horizontal line element, which configures the horizontal line. So the element is this HR, and this is a standalone element. So once you put this element, what will happen is, as you see the example here, due to this element, this line is being created, this line. Okay. This line is being created. Now, the second way of creating lines and borders are using CSS. And CSS has a property named the border property. Okay. The border property, what it does is it configures a border on top, right, bottom, and left side of an element. Okay. So if you put, so this is an example. You see, we have created a CSS rule for a heading element, and we have used CSS border property. And this one has like 3 values, right? 3 values. So these 3 values correspondent to 3 things. The first one means border width, the first value. The second value is border style, solid. And the third value is border color. Okay, this is the border color is red here. You see RGB, right? So it's red. And because of that, a border is being created for this heading element. And you see, you can visualize it here. And as you know, we already know about the block elements and inline elements, right? So the block elements are the elements that take all the space from left to the right of the page, right? Whereas the inline element is the element which takes only the space around the content of the element. So we know the hyperlinks or anchor elements are inline elements, whereas the heading, paragraph, those are block elements. So when you create a border around a block element, obviously the border would be visible around the whole space it takes, right? So this is, for example, a rule for a heading element, and you see how it will look like. This will look like this. So this will look like this one, right? Whereas if you use the border property for an inline element, the border would be obviously created just across its content, because the inline element, just the border will closely outline the element content, right? Okay. Okay, so the border display can vary by the browser. That means if you're creating the solid border or the dashed border, just because of the difference of the browser, they will look different. So it may look like this on Edge browser. The same thing may look like this on Firefox browser. Okay, so those are just minor differences, just based on how the browser is rendering them. Then you can actually configure a specific side of the border. In that case, we saw that if we use just the border property, right, it will configure the border on all 4 sides. Instead of that, you can just configure it on the side you want. So in those cases, you have to use these properties: border bottom, border left, border right, or border top. Okay, so if you mention just one of them and then use these 3 values for them. So for example, for the one that you're seeing here, border bottom property is being used with, it says like it's 2 pixel wide, solid, and red in color, and only the bottom border is going to be displayed. Okay, so then the next one, let's talk about the CSS padding property. So as you see, like if we when we were actually creating the borders were just adjacent to the text. You see, just there is no space between the text and the border itself in neither direction. So if we want to keep some space between the border and the text or the content, in that case, that space is called padding. So CSS has a padding property which configures empty space between the content of HTML element and the border. And by default, this is 0. So if you don't use padding property, obviously is 0. So here you see we haven't used any padding property. So by default, this doesn't mean that there is no padding. It means that is 0 padding. Okay, but explicitly you can put use the padding property and put value for it. So for example, here it says for this heading element, we have defined a border and then we have defined the padding, and we say the padding is like 5 pixel. And because of that, what happens is now in all the directions, top, bottom, left, right, every direction 5 pixel has been added between the content and the border. Here on the right side, you see much larger area. The reason is this is a block display element, right? So because there is no text here, it looks empty, but basically we have added 5 pixels in all directions. And if no padding was configured, it would have looked like this. You see the difference, right? So in that case, the border would have been closely outlined around the text. And obviously, you can configure padding on specific sides. So when you are using just padding property, is going to be applied in all sides, but you can say like padding bottom, left, right, or top, and then have different values for them. So you see padding left is 5 pixels, so 5 pixels here. Padding bottom is 10, 10 here. Padding top is 10 and 10 here. Okay. And there is nothing mentioned about the right. So basically the default value is going to be there, which is 0. So there are shorthand for padding property. So as you see, if I say like in our previous example, we said like padding is 5 pixel. In that case, 5 is going to 5. There will be 5 pixel space in all directions. But there are some shorthand properties. So if you, instead of one value, if you put like 2 values for the padding property, what's going to happen? The first value is going to be a shorthand for the top and bottom padding. And the second value configures left and right padding. So in this example here, for this heading 2 element, there's a style defined, right? And so there'll be 20 pixels on the top, 20 pixels of padding, 20 pixels of padding on the bottom, and 10 pixels on left and 10 on right. Okay, so this is the shorthand value. You can just put 2 values and each of them will configure in 2 directions each. You can also put like 4 values. In that case, the first one is, you have to remember the first value would be for the top. The second value would be for the right. So clockwise, top 30 pixel, right 10 pixel, bottom 5 pixel, and left 20 pixel. So it would be clockwise. Finally, CSS border and padding properties, they add visual interest to the page. What does it mean is, suppose here, look at this page here. Obviously, this one has this border in the bottom right, and this one also has a border in the bottom, and then you can see a horizontal line. So basically, what it says it is without these borders, right, the page would have looked a little bit different. And this one adds visual interest, means now this one not only looks visually aesthetic with adding these borders and paddings, it actually looks more organized. For example, you see the horizontal line here. This actually separates out the content of the page with the footer, right? So it looks like the footer. Also with these 2 borders, now we know that these are like some kind of heading and these are the contents for them, right? It makes more sense. Okay, so these are very basic CSS and HTML properties and elements, and a basic visual and graphic element on a page. Okay. Next, the type of graphics that we usually use on web pages. You are already familiar with most with these all. So the most commonly used graphic types are GIF or GIF, JPEG or JPG, PNG, and WebP. So GIF images, they can be transparent or non-transparent. So mostly they are best for used for line arts and logos. You can have like a maximum of 256 colors, and it uses lossless compression. That means if you compress it, right? So if you make a, suppose from a larger GIF image, if you compress it and make it a smaller image, from the smaller image, you can actually rebuild the larger image because the compression would be lossless. Anyways, these are not the things that you need to like very this. So you just go through it in your textbook, but this is not the very basic things. You just need some of the properties as a web developer. In that case, you can decide whether you, for your purpose, you want to use GIF or JPEG or PNG or WebP. Okay, so JPEG is most commonly used graphic type on pages. It cannot be animated. So if you want animated images, you have to use GIF. The PNG, so PNG images are used in cases where you need to make the image background transparent because it supports multiple level of transparency. And then finally is WebP, and this is relatively new. This is intended to provide improved compression for GIF and JPEG images, and the browser support is growing for WebP images. And this is actually pronounced WebP. So although it's written WebP, but this is pronounced WebP. Okay, so these are the things I would suggest you to go through the book and read about these 4 graphics types. Let's move on to our main focus of the discussion on how to use images using HTML and CSS. So HTML has one element called image element. This is IMG. So the IMG element, which we will call the image element, configures graphics on a web page. These graphics can be photographs, banners, company logos, navigation button, etc. So the image element is usually a void element, and is not coded as a pair of opening and closing tags. So you see, there is no closing tag for image element. It has multiple attributes. You have to use it with multiple attributes. So you see the source attribute. This will mention the file name or the graphic that you want to use. For example, here you see dog.jpg. So this is the image here. And then the next attribute is the alt attribute, which provides a text replacement, typically a text description. So as we said, like, although suppose we are putting this image on my page, but it's very common, or you have to actually keep in mind that this image might not be visible to many of the people who are accessing your page. So in that case, still there should be a way for them to understand what this missing image was for, right? Because this might be a very important part of the page. So the alt attribute configures the alternate text description. So the alternate text description here says dog at computer. So even if someone is not loading the image or cannot see the image, this text will appear there, dog at computer. So he will know, okay, there was the image of a dog sitting in front of a computer or something like that. Next is the height attribute and the width attribute, which defines the height and the width of the image in pixels. Okay. Okay, so so we already discussed, but going over it again. Accessibility, to make sure that the image is accessible. This is the requirement. Obviously, configure the alt attribute, which gives an alternate text to convey the meaning of the image, and make sure that the value of the alt attribute is not the name of the image. So suppose you may put here like dog.jpg. If you put it like this, put some meaningful text here. Otherwise, if it was the name of the file, in case of the absence of the image, only the name of the file would have been displayed, and it wouldn't have made much sense to someone who is looking at the page. He's not seeing the image, but even if he knows that this is an image of a dog, but dog in front of a computer might be very relevant to might be very relevant in information, instead of just knowing that, okay, there was a random dog image here. Okay, so the bottom line is make sure that this text has some meaning in it. Okay. So here is one recommendation. If your site navigation uses image link for the main navigation, provide simple text links at the bottom of the page. So we'll see how we can use image links. So the recommendation here is, if you are using image links anywhere in your page, make sure those text links corresponding to the image links are also in the bottom of the page. This is very important because if this image is only decorative, in that case, it might not be very important. But suppose this image was actually a link. So if this is gone and the link is gone, you see a major part of your page is gone, right? Is absent. So make sure that if you're using an image link, there is also a text link. I'm going to show you examples for that. Okay, so let me show you examples. So how do we create image links? So image link is a combination of image element and the hyperlink element. Let's see if we have examples. Okay, so let's look at this one. Okay, so if I go here, you see we have multiple images, GIF images, and then we open this. Let's see what is in here. Okay, so here you see we have the header, then navigation, main, and footer. Okay, so inside the navigation, you see we have like 4 hyperlinks: home, tours, reservations, contact. Okay, so for the first one, let's look at this one. We have an anchor element which will take us to index.html. That is fine. But instead of a text, what we are doing is we are putting an image. You see it here? Instead of text, we are putting an image. So what's going to happen is this image is going to work as the hyperlink. So, and then the second one is also, instead of text, we have another image. If I go here, you see we have these images, home, right? If I open this image, you see this was the home image, this small image, because this one also has a black background, it's blended, but this is, you see, this is a home image, and then tours image, reservation image, right? Contact, and then we had this image. Okay, so how do we close this? Okay. So now you understand how to create image hyperlinks, right? So you create a hyperlink or anchor element, and instead of text, you put an image. Okay. So here is also the recommended thing. As we said, like if you are creating, so this is how you are creating image links, right? So if you're creating image links, make sure that there is a text links in the bottom. So, and you see here, right? So if somehow these images are not being loaded, the links are gone, right? So you don't, obviously you don't want someone who is visiting your page not to have these links accessible, because these are the like important part of your page, right? So you cannot afford these links gone just because the images are not there. Also, you want to use the images because this page now looks far more better without these images, right? Okay, so here is the recommended practice. You see in the bottom, we also have these text links. So in case the image doesn't load for someone, still you will have all the links here. Yes, and we have put these links in the footer. So inside the footer, we have put another nav area where we put these links. And instead of image, now we put text. Okay, so remember this practice. And now we know how to create image link. Another thing is, some browsers automatically add a border to the image link. So suppose if you're creating an image link, there will be a border by default. Some browsers do that. So configure CSS to eliminate the border. So for the image element, create a rule which says like border style is none. Okay, so next, this is a trick of how you can create a thumbnail image. So the trick is using the image link thing, the same thing. So you see here, okay, let's see this. So basically this is an anchor element, right? And it's linked to an image. So the reference hyperlink reference links to an image. And what we do is, so this is an anchor element, right? And it links to an image, but we are creating an image link. So basically, initially this image is going to be displayed, right? And then once you click the link, it will take you to another image. So if I show you here, okay, so you see, okay, let's look at these two images, sunset, okay, and then this is the other one. So you see the smaller one, this is the smaller one, and this is the larger one. Okay, so the smaller one is this thumb.jpg, okay? So this is the smaller one. This is the smaller one, thumb.jpg. You see it here. And this is the larger one. Oh, okay, so I have selected both. This is the larger one, sunset.jpg. Okay, and now let's open this HTML file, thumb.html. Control Shift I. Okay, inside the body, you see we have a link, a hyperlink, and it's linked to sunset.jpg. So if I click that link, this thing is going to be opened. But now, for now, it's displaying this thumb.jpg. You see? Okay, so basically we are seeing thumb.jpg, but if I click on it, it will open sunset.jpg. Okay, so let's see how it looks like. So if I click on it, now this larger image is being displayed. Okay, So this is how thumbnail works, right? So click on the smaller one and then it opens the larger image. So this is just how you can use image link to create thumbnails and how to make and how you display the larger images from the thumbnail. Okay, so using this image link technique, you can do that. And I showed you one example. Yeah, this is the same thing for they're showing the example for another image. Okay, so next, let's talk about one important thing, image optimization. This is also very important because when we create images, sometimes these images are like very heavy in size. So even if you take an image with your iPhone, you see the images might be multiple megabytes, 5 megabyte, 10 megabyte. If you're taking image with your like even better quality images, suppose with your DSLR phone, it might be even 100 megabyte size. So it's very important, but you cannot afford to put those heavy images on your site because uh, when you are loading your page, right, those images are also going to be downloaded. And if the images are very heavy, in that case, the loading of the pages are going to take a lot of time. Not only that, data might be scarce and it will use up a lot of data. So you have to make sure for a good web developer, you have to make sure that the images that you are using on your page are optimized. By optimization means it has to be with the lowest file size. At the same time, you have to maintain good quality image. And obviously, photographs taken with digital cameras are not usually optimized for the web. So even if you have photographs taken with digital camera, still you have to use some softwares to optimize the images before putting them uh, in or using them in your site. Okay. So image optimization is the process of reducing the file size of the image, reducing the dimension of the image to the actual width and height of the image on the web page. For optimization, we can use different editing tools. Here are some of the editing tools like GIMP, which is free, Pixlr, which is free, or the paid softwares like Adobe Photoshop. Uh, Also, here are also some other recommendations like uh, what kind of names you should use for the image files. Obviously, all of these are like recommendations. These are not like mandatory. Use lowercase letters. Do not use symbols. Do not change the extension, right? Uh, Keep your file names short but descriptive. So i1.gif, this is not a good name. Um, Name your image which actually describes what the image is. This is helpful. Obviously, whoever is browsing your page, the name of the image might not be important for him because he's not looking at the name of the image, but it's important for you because when you are developing the website, right, you have to organize everything. And if you put like correct names, it will help you in organization. Also make sure that it's not too long, like make it descriptive but not too long descriptive. So here is one important thing. As I said, like naming the images will help you organize your site properly. There are also other things to remember, that when you are organizing your site, make sure that all the images are placed in a different folder. So like instead of just putting images here and there, put them in one folder. You suppose you can have a folder like this. So this is an example of all the source code and images for your site. So suppose you have a site for CircleSoft, so some kind of software company, and index.html, services.html, these are the pages of your site, right? And you have this CSS file, you put them here, and then you create a folder named images where you put all the images in there. Okay, now once you are using these images in your HTML files, just do this. Just in the source image, when you are using the image element as the value of the source attribute, just say that it's in the image folder and home.gif. Okay, so put the path of the image and that's it. But this is going to help you organize your page, putting everything in the folder and then using the path, right? Okay, so next let's talk about another element. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, uh, so okay, so let me show you one example first. So yeah, so here you can see an image. It has a border and also it has a caption which says Tropical Island Gateway. If I go to the source code for this, we'll see inside the body we have an image. Okay, and we have an image with all the attributes: source attribute, alt attribute, width and height attribute, and then we have a text. Okay, we just have a text. And if I now you can say how this text is aligned here, because the text was supposed to be here, right? By default, how we have put it in the middle and how we have a border across around the text and the image. The answer is like probably we're using some CSS technique. So you see, this is inside the div element, right? And the div element is using the ID attribute. That means it has some ID selectors and the value for that is figure. That means there is some style rule named figure which defines the style of this div element, and whatever is inside this div element are going to follow that style. Okay, so let's see what style was defined. So here is that style figure. It has a border, the font, padding, text alignment is center. Okay, so whatever text is inside the div element is going to be centered. There is going to be a border across around all the elements that is in the div element, and then there will be also going to be some padding. And you see all of these here. So inside the div we have one image and one text. So whatever text is there is centered, that is fine. Image, and around the image um, and this text we have this border. The border is defined here, and also there is padding. So you see, do you see some white space between the border and the image? 5 pixel in each direction, and also 5 pixel here. This is due to this padding. Okay, so overall you see, just to create something like this, like our intention was having an image with a caption, centered caption, and a border across all of it, around all of it. So we had to configure CSS and create a lot of rules to achieve all of these. Okay, so but there are simpler ways to do this, and that is the figure element. So the figure element, let's look at the figure element. Okay, so not the image, I want the page. Okay, so now this one looks similar to the one as the previous one, right? But let's see how we have created this. So here you see we have used this figure element. So the figure element has two child elements. One is the image element and the other one is the figure caption element. Okay, so this time I don't have to use any style rules or anything. What I do is I create a figure element, and inside that the child elements, first one is the image element and the second one is the figure caption element. And once I put those, I put a caption in the fig caption element. Once I do that, the caption is already centered. I see the image and then there's a border around it. Okay. Now, you may wonder why this new HTML5 element was created, like, whereas I could do the same thing using CSS, right? I could do the same thing using the CSS. Obviously, you can ask that. The reason is semantics. The div element, in the previous example, we had put it in the div element, right? The div element is useful, but very generic in nature. So using the div element, we can actually do a lot of stuff. It's very generic. When the figure and the fig caption elements are used, the structure of the content is well defined. That's why we have HTML5 has this separate figure element. And this is a block display element, as you see. That means it's taking all the space from left to right. If I put if you put a text after the figure element, it will appear here. It won't appear here, which is obvious. Okay, so let's move on. HTML5 meter element. So this is also a visual element, and this displays a visual gauge for a numeric value within a known range. Okay, I'm going to show you the example for that. Okay, so let's look at this example. So the meter element, this is a standalone element. You don't have a closing tag for this. So it has the value attribute where you put the value, and it has this min and max value. Okay. So let's look at this one. So the value is 7,000, min is 0, and max is 14,000 something. So if you put something like this, what you're going to see is this. Okay. So this will show you, this is the mean value, this is the max value, and this is your value. So this will give you a visual representation of how much, what is the value within the range. Okay. So okay, so next, let's talk about the progress element. This one displays a bar that depicts a numeric value within a specific range. So this is also like meter, but instead of putting exact value, this one will show you the some kind of like percentage. So it has two things. One is the value and the second one is the highest value. So if you put something like this, you will see something like this. So it will show you that you are, for this particular one, it will fill 50% of it with green, but it won't show you the exact value. So it will just show you the proportion. Okay, so it's similar to meter element, whereas in the meter element, you explicitly show the numbers and values. Here in the progress element, you just show the proportion. Okay, next, a very important topic we are going to discuss, which is CSS background image property. Because when you are creating pages or websites, using background images are very common, and the most efficient way to do this is using a CSS property, and the name of that CSS property is background image. So obviously this one configures the background image, and by default the images are tile. That means it's repeated. I will show you what tile means. So here, for example, let's look at this one. Okay, so here is a CSS rule for the body of the page. The property that we are going to use is background image, and you have to put the value like this, URL, and then braces, and inside the brace put the name of the image. Okay, so suppose the background image is this. This is the background image. This is just a narrow strip, right? And if you define this rule, suppose background1.gif. So this is background1.gif. And once you define this rule, the whole body will now look like this. Now, as I said, if you don't mention anything, by default, this is going to repeat. So that's exactly what happened here. So this is repeated from top to bottom. Now it looks like a wide one image, right? But basically it was just one single image tiled. So that's why we say by default the background image is tiled. Okay, so these are like multiple tiles which create this wide image kind of thing. Let's look at this one. This is a small rectangular background that is repeated to fill the web page window. So this is the background image, and then we set it as the background image of the body, and you see what happened. It's styled top to bottom and also left to right. Okay. Now, the default thing is the background image being repeated in all directions, but you can control it. So you can say, so these are the properties, property values. So you can say like, so suppose this is the image, okay? This is the image. You can say repeat Y. That means it just be repeated across the Y axis, and you see what it looks like. And also suppose if this is the image and you say repeat X, then it's repeated along the X axis. And then you can say no repeat. In that case, only one of the images are going to be shown on the top left, and it's done. Okay. The same thing for the other images. Y axis, repeat X, no repeat. So here is one example. Suppose you have this, look at this rule for the heading element. So it has background color, text color, font, padding just on the left. We have some padding on the left. Background image, the value is like this. We have a like flower.gif, and background repeat, none, no repeat. You see, the value is no repeat. So what happens is, this is the flower.gif, and once you render this, this one will look like this. You see the background color, that is fine. You see the background image, flower.gif, this is here, and no repeat. So it just appears once. And the other thing you see here is the padding left is 30 pixel. So actually, this is creating some space here for the image. If I didn't have this, right? Because there is creating 30 pixels of empty area, where the otherwise what would have happened if I just get rid of this text was going to be put on the image. Okay, so the text would have started here, whereas the image also would have started here. Okay, so let me show you the background repeat. If I have the background repeat property, examples for that. By the way, we have this. Oh, okay. So we're going to this W3 school. It one has examples for everything. Okay, I don't know how to move this. Okay, let me move this. So if you, okay, so let's look at the example from W3 school. Yeah, so you see there is an image, paper.gif, and what you do is you're creating a style rule for the body, right? And background repeat property is being used, and the value is repeat y. So it's repeated in the y-axis. If I make it like, say, oh no, let's make it repeat x. Now you see it's repeated, this image is repeated along the x-axis. Or let's say no repeat. In that case, it appears only once. Okay. Okay, now let's go back to our thing. Okay, so next, background clip property. It confines the display of the background image. So what it means is, suppose you can configure the image so that the background image is confined to the content box, or it confined to the padding box, or it's confined to the border box. So as you know about the content, right? We have talked about, like, did we talk about box model? I think we did, right? In the last lecture that was on Wednesday. Okay, so if you want your image to be confined only to the content, then you can do that. You want it to be extended up to the padding box, right? So between the content, so this is the content, right? Between the content and the border, there is padding. So you may want the background image to cover just the content, or you may want the background image to cover the content and the padding, or you may, so this is this, or you may want the background image to cover everything, the content, padding, and the border. You can also do that. So Yeah. So here is one example. You see there are 3 rules defined. Example 1, example 2, right? 3 style rules defined, and example 3. The only difference is here. Oh, okay, not this one actually. Yeah, let's look at this one. Yeah, so the only difference between these 3 rules are here, background clip. The first one says border box, the second one says padding box, and the third one says content box. And now you see we have 3 div elements, 1, 2, and 3. They have their styles defined in, the first one has from example 1, the second one is example 2, and the third one is example 3. And there's like 3 paragraphs. So basically, these div elements, each of these div elements have these border, they have padding, right? And they have a paragraph, which is the content, right? So depending on what style they're taking or applying, you see the background, which is the light blue, is either taking all the way up to the border, or it's taking all the way up to the padding. So it's covering just the content and padding here. And finally, for the last one, it's only covering the content. Okay. So in any case, anyways, another thing, like if you want to inspect like any of the properties, CSS properties or HTML, just Google and W3 School, this site. This one will actually have examples for everything. So you can just run it, make changes, and do the practice. This is a very good practicing place. So next, let's talk about background origin. So as you see, if we don't mention anything, the background image and everything starts at the top left, right? But I can actually define or dictate where the origin will be. Oh, okay, so this is not okay. So okay, this is not about the top left or other thing. So let's go and look at the example here. Yeah. Okay, so for the first style, the background origin is padding box. So it starts from the padding area. For the second one, okay, here also we have like 3 div elements. 1, 2, 3. First one style comes from example 1. The second one takes the styles from example 2. Third one is from example 3. Okay, so the first one has the background origin from the padding box. So the background image, that paper.gif, that one starts from the padding area, right? The second one starts from the border, that is the border box, right? And the third one says, third style rule says that the background origin is from the content box. So that's why it starts from the content box. Okay. Finally, the background size property. So it can be used to resize or scale the background image. Okay, let me show you. You see here one example, you see the example here without the background size property, how it looks, and with the size, background size value to 100%, 100%. Okay, let me see if I have an example for this. Okay, so yeah, so let's look at the example. Okay, so this is the image of Sedona in Arizona. Okay, so this is just an image of Sedona, and we want to use this image as background. Well, okay, so this image, let's look at the image. Let's open it in Paint. Okay, so if you open in Paint, you see the dimensions of the image is 322 into 100. Okay, so that is all. So if when I am actually using it here, Control Shift I, you see we have two div elements. The first one is style defined here in test. The second one has style defined in test1. Now let's look at the styles. Now for the test, you see both of them says like no repeat. Okay, both of them use the same background image. Both the style rules, they use the same background image. Both of them say no repeat. But the difference is the third one, it says the background size is 100%, 100%. What it means is, it says, okay, so what does it mean? It means that it says the test1 rule. So the test1 rule says, fill up all the area 100% from left to right and 100% from top to bottom, fill it up with the background image. So you see that this background image is stretched to fill up this div area 100%, both from left to right and top to bottom. Whereas the first div area, it takes the style rules from this, right? The first text div element applies the style rules defined in test, which has no mention about the background size. So what it does is it just puts the image based on the size of its image, right? So the image originally was this size. It was just shown like that. But so using this background size property, I can stretch the background image to fill up the proportion of my element. So when I put this, I can stretch the same image to fill out my whole area. Okay. Next, I can use multiple backgrounds. Let me show you. So okay, so if we want to use multiple backgrounds, what you have to do is you have to use this background property and then put on multiple images. So let me show you one example. Okay, so let's open this page. Control-Shift-I. Okay, so let's look at the CSS property. So as I said, like we have to use this background property to create multiple to use multiple background images. So you put you mention the first image, you say no repeat, and you also mention the position, left, bottom, and then you put a comma, and you have to put the description for the next image that you want. So you can actually keep on repeating as many images as you want. For each of them, just tell whether you want repeat or not, whether you want it to be its position, etc., etc. Okay. So here in this example, you see we have used two images, coffee, and the second one is coffee pour.jpg. Okay. And another thing to see here is if I move it, you see that this image is not shrinking. The reason behind this is fixed. Do you see that? So the image is fixed, so it doesn't like flex. Okay, so we have two images, coffee.gif and coffeepore.gif. So this is a coffee.gif. You see a small coffee cup. This is coffee.gif and this is coffeepore.gif. If I go here, you see the coffee pour. This is fixed. This is put here. This starts from the left, from the default place. So it actually takes the whole background. Whereas this coffee.gif, this is, you can see it here. This is in the bottom left and no repeat. Okay, if I just remove it, let's see what happens. Now this one, it actually fills up everything because we said by default, the background image is tiled, right? Okay. And so now you know how to use multiple background images. You have to use this background CSS property. And then you have to list all the background images that you want. 1, 2, and if you even want more, you can just add more. You put a comma here and then add more. URL, say anything. Do we have more images here? Coffee back. Let's see how it looks like. This is GIF. I don't know why this is not working. Let's see. Okay. I have to check why this is not working. Oh, okay. Maybe it's because of this. I have put a space. Yeah. Now you see I replaced it with coffee back. Okay. Yeah. So multiple background images. We saw this and this. Okay. Okay, so now let's look at some more HTML elements to configure images. So we'll talk about image map, favorites icon, and the other ones we'll put it for the next part of the discussion. So we'll talk about two more elements, and the second part of the lecture is going to be on the other things like CSS sprite, sources for graphics, etc. But in our live session, we are going to cover first part of the live session. We are going to cover this, and I will post the recording for this second part immediately after our class is over. Okay. So let's talk about the image map element. So image map element, it has like, it's a combination of two things. First one is the map element, and then the second one is the area element. Let me show you the example. I think that would be helpful. So this is how an image map looks like. Okay, so you have a map element. And then you have an area element. And okay, so this is how an image map looks like. Start from here. So an image map means you are doing some kind of mapping inside an image. So suppose this is the image. You want to create a hyperlink, so which will work only if you click on a specific part of the image. For example, say if you click on this ship, it will take you a site about ships or something like that. If you click on this green, it takes you to some kind of a site which talks about the forest. If you click on the water, then it takes you some site about oceans or lakes. Okay, so basically you are mapping your image. How do you do that? And you are probably familiar with this kind of stuff. So on the same image, if you click on different areas, it will link you or take you to different pages, right? So that's what an image map is. And how do you create an image map? Obviously, first of all, you have the image, right? You have the image. And this is important. Using this attribute, use map, and for the value, put some kind of value for that. Okay. Hashtag, and then name of the value. Okay. So this is the image, original image with image element. Use map attribute, and the value for that is a name, a word with a hashtag. So there goes the first part. Now creating the map. What do you have to use? You have to use this map element. And this one will have this ID attribute. And the value of the ID attribute, this one, has to match this one. Okay. So now this map is going to use this image. So basically, by using this use map, you are creating a connection between this image and this map. Okay. So inside the map, you create this link, hyperlink, just an anchor element. And you have to, it's just like an anchor element, but this is called the area element, which has three attributes: hyperlink reference, shape, rectangular, and coordinates. So this one is 24,188. This is the top left, and 339,283 is the bottom right. So this is the top left, and this is the bottom right. And also, put an alt value, door county phishing. So in case the image doesn't, this is some kind of link, right? You're creating some kind of link. In case the image doesn't render, or image is not being displayed, still you should have some kind of text to say where the link was, like what the image was for, right? So let's look at the example. So this is the image, fishing boat .jpg. We are creating some kind of map here. Okay, so this is, now you see if I put my mouse on it, right? It will take me to, if I click on this, is taking me to this fishing site, right? So basically here we have a map. We have created a map, Control-Shift-I. So this was the image. We use this use map attribute. We named it hash fishing, and then we use this map element, and the ID for that is fishing, right? So this one got linked with this, and inside that we have this area. Now you see, in the slide we had just one area. Now we have like two areas. You see that? We have two areas. So the first one is 051 to 416,170, and the second area. So the first one area will take me to nature.org, whereas the second area is going to take me to fishingdoorcounty.com. So both of them have rectangular shapes, and okay, so both of them have rectangular shapes, and so the first one, 051. So 0 is going to be x-axis is going to be 0, 51, which should be something like, yeah, something here. You see 51. Okay, so 051 is here. And the bottom is 416,170. Now, if you look at this image, this image is like 416 pixels from left to right. Just look at that black box. which shows the size of the image, 416 into 350. Okay, so 416, 170. 416 is going to be here, and 170 is going to be here. So this is the bottom right for the first area, and this is the, so this is 051, this is 051, and this is, yeah, this is 416, 170. That means if I click on this, it takes me to nature.org. You see that? Okay, so basically we have created a rectangle for these forest area. And then we have created another area, another rectangular area across this ship or boat. And the top left coordinate for this is 24,188, and bottom right is, yes, this is a little bit like you need to know the exact coordinates of the image to make sure that your area is correct. But in any case, now this is a very interesting thing, and this is a very I have used these image maps in, even think like this, even if you have a world map with different countries, and if you can click on different countries and it takes you to different sites, that's also an image map, right? So somehow you have mapped the image map in the way so that you create different areas in the image, which, so basically you create different links. So this area is linked to some site, this area is linked to some site, you create another area to some site. Okay, so the key thing is you have the image. First of all, use this attribute, use map, give it a name, hash that name. Using that name, now create a map, and then inside the map create areas. Okay, so this is how you create image maps. Yeah, so in the example here, just one area was created, but the example that I showed you, two areas were created. Okay, two image maps. Okay, next, let's talk about the favorite icons. This is not uncommon to you. Let's see, if I go to, suppose, bbc.com. Okay, so can you see this three dots? Or let's go to another site, Al Jazeera. Does Al Jazeera has a icon? So basically the icon, I'm looking for the icon, or let's go to, oh yeah. So you see, do you see that the icon? So on the tabs, we see these icons. So for BBC, there are like three rectangles. Al Jazeera has Al Jazeera's icon, all right? So this is called the fav icon. How do we put this fav icon? So this is a square image associated with the web page, usually named favicon.ico. May display in the browser's address bar, tab, or favorite bookmarks list. So sometimes this may appear here, or here, or if you bookmark this page, it will show you on the bookmarks. You see, it will show, you'll be displayed on the bookmarks, right? So how do we create that? So it's simple. The name of it will be favicon.ico. What you have to do is you have to use a link tag. it will have attributes, relation, value is icon, the link or href is favicon.ico, and type is this. So let me show you one example. So here you see that we have different images, but look specifically at this image, favicon.ico. Okay. This is usually the extension or the name of the image that we use. Then let's go to index.html. Now you see, we see that icon here. Do you see that? Okay. Control-Shift-I. How do we put it there? So if we go to the head, you see we use a link element. Link element. The value for relation value is like icon. So do you remember when did we use link element before? When we linked is external style sheet, right? In that case, the real value was like style sheet, right? Something like that. This time we say icon. href is the reference, the link. The link is favicon.ico, right? So it points to the same image, and the type is image. Okay, so this is how you create this or link this. So this is the favorites icon. So if you bookmark this page, even on your bookmark list, that icon will appear. Okay. Yeah, so here is one example. If the image is this, and then you put this inside the head, now the